March 3, 1952. Bumpy Johnson was bleeding out in a Harlem alley. 3 bullets in his chest, his vision fading, and the last thing he expected to see was a 12-year-old kid standing over him with tears streaming down his face. That kid, Marcus Webb, made a choice that night that saved the most dangerous man in Harlem. And for 20 years, Bumpy never forgot it. But what Bumpy did in 1972, when Marcus needed him most, that's the story they don't tell you. The story about loyalty, about debt, about a gangster with a heart that beat stronger than his legend. This is about the night a child became a hero and the day a king repaid a debt that made grown men cry. To understand what happened on March 3, 1952, you need to understand where Bumpy Johnson was in his life. He was 45 years old, at the peak of his power. He controlled every numbers racket in Harlem, had connections with Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, and the 5 families. The NYPD knew his name. The FBI had a file on him 3 inches thick. But in Harlem, in his neighborhood, Bumpy Johnson wasn't a criminal. He was protection. He was justice. He was the man who made sure black businesses didn't get shaken down, made sure dirty cops got what they deserved, made sure Harlem stayed Harlem. But power always comes with enemies. And in 1952, those enemies finally got their shot. Vincent, the Snake, Carbone was a capo in the Genovese family who'd been trying to muscle into Harlem's drug trade for 2 years. Bumpy had said no. Not just no, hell no. Bumpy had one rule that never bent. No hard drugs in Harlem. Not heroin, not cocaine, nothing that would turn his neighborhood into what he'd seen happen in Chicago and Detroit. Families destroyed, kids turned into addicts, communities rotting from the inside out. Carbone didn't care about Bumpy's rules. He cared about money. And Harlem represented millions in untapped drug revenue. So Carbone did what men like him always do when negotiation fails. He hired killers. March 3, 1952. 11:47 p.m. Bumpy was walking out of Wells Restaurant on 135th Street. He'd just finished dinner with Stephanie St. Clair, the numbers queen, discussing territory arrangements and police payoffs. Normal business. He was alone, which was unusual. His bodyguards were handling a situation in the Bronx, a numbers runner who'd been skimming. Bumpy had told them he'd be fine for one night. That was his first mistake. The alley next to Wells' restaurant was narrow, dark, lined with garbage cans and fire escapes. Bumpy turned the corner, heading toward his car parked on Lenox Avenue. That's when he heard it. The scrape of a shoe on concrete. Too deliberate to be a rat. Too heavy to be nothing. Bumpy's hand went to his waistband, reaching for the straight razor he always carried. But before he could clear it, 3 men stepped out of the shadows. Not Italian, he noticed immediately. Black men. Hired muscle from outside Harlem, men who didn't know him, didn't respect him, didn't care about the code. The one in front had a .38 revolver. The 2 behind him had knives. Carbone sends his regards, the gunman said. His voice was flat, professional. This wasn't personal for him. It was just a job. You tell Carbone, Bumpy said calmly, his hand still on his razor, that if he wants Harlem, he can come himself. Don't send boys to do a man's work. The gunman smiled. We ain't boys. And you ain't walking out of this alley. The first shot caught Bumpy in the left shoulder. The impact spun him around, slammed him against the brick wall. Pain exploded through his body, white-hot and immediate. The second shot hit his chest, just below his collarbone. He felt his lung collapse, felt the air leaving his body like someone had opened a valve. Bumpy tried to pull his razor, but his hand wouldn't respond. His fingers were numb. The third shot hit him in the abdomen, low and devastating. He collapsed, his back sliding down the brick wall until he was sitting in a puddle of his own blood. The 3 men stood over him, watching. Making sure. "That's Bumpy Johnson?" one of them asked. "Looks like every other dead man to me." They laughed. Started walking away. Their job was done. Vincent Carboni had paid them $5,000 to kill the king of Harlem, and as far as they were concerned, the king was dead. But they didn't check. They didn't wait. They just walked away. And that was their mistake. Marcus Webb was 12 years old and should have been home. His mama, Dorothy Webb, worked night shifts as a nurse at Harlem Hospital. She left Marcus with his grandmother every night at 7 p.m., with strict instructions. Do your homework, eat dinner, go to bed by 9. No going outside. But Marcus had homework he couldn't finish. A math problem he didn't understand. And his friend Jimmy, who was good at math, lived 3 blocks away on 135th Street. So at 11:30 p.m., when his grandmother fell asleep watching television, Marcus snuck out. He was walking down the alley next to Wells' restaurant, taking the shortcut to Jimmy's building, when he saw the man sitting against the wall. At first, Marcus thought he was drunk. Harlem had plenty of men who drank too much and passed out in alleys. Marcus's own father had been one of them before he disappeared when Marcus was 6. But then Marcus saw the blood. Dark, spreading across the man's chest, pooling on the ground. And he saw the man's face. Everyone in Harlem knew that face. Bumpy Johnson. Marcus froze. His first instinct was to run. You didn't get involved. You didn't see things. That's what his mama always said. In Harlem, you mind your business and you survive. But then Bumpy's eyes opened. Just barely. Glassy with pain, unfocused. And he looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. "Help," Bumpy whispered. The word came out as a rasp, barely audible. "Please." Marcus stood there, paralyzed. He was 12 years old. He weighed maybe 90 pounds. And the most dangerous man in Harlem, the man everyone feared and respected, was begging him for help. "Please," Bumpy said again. His hand reached out, trembling, covered in blood. "My wife. Tell my wife." Something in Marcus's chest cracked open. Maybe it was the way Bumpy said "wife." Like that was all that mattered. Not his empire, not his money, not his reputation. His wife. Marcus ran. Not away. Toward. He burst into Wells' restaurant at 11:52 p.m. The place was closing down, chairs already up on tables. The owner, Mr. Wells, was counting the register. "Mr. Wells." Marcus screamed. "Mr. Bumpy's hurt. He's in the alley. He's dying." Mr. Wells dropped the money. "Call an ambulance," he shouted to the cook. Then he grabbed a tablecloth and ran after Marcus. They found Bumpy exactly where Marcus had left him. Unconscious now, his breathing shallow and wet, blood everywhere. Mr. Wells pressed the tablecloth against Bumpy's chest, trying to stop the bleeding. He looked at Marcus, saw the fear in the boy's eyes. "You did good, son. You saved his life." Marcus didn't feel like a hero. He felt terrified. What if the men who shot Bumpy came back? What if they saw him? What if they came for him next? The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later. Police came with it, 3 officers who knew Bumpy's reputation. They looked at him lying there, looked at each other. "He gonna make it?" One officer asked the paramedic. The paramedic, a young white man who looked barely older than Marcus's older brother, shook his head. "Not likely. He's lost too much blood. 3 gunshot wounds, 1 collapsed lung, possible abdominal perforation. Even if we get him to the hospital alive, his odds are maybe 20%. They loaded Bumpy onto a stretcher. Mr. Wells climbed into the ambulance with him. "What about the kid?" one officer asked, pointing at Marcus. Take him home, another officer said. Get his information for the report. But Marcus didn't go home. He followed the ambulance on foot, running the 8 blocks to Harlem Hospital, where his mama worked. He burst through the emergency room doors at 12:17 a.m., out of breath, covered in Bumpy Johnson's blood. Marcus! His mama grabbed him, pulled him close, her hands running over him, checking for injuries. What happened? Are you hurt? It's not my blood, Marcus gasped. It's Mr. Bumpy's. He got shot. I found him. I called for help. Dorothy Webb's face went pale. You found Bumpy Johnson shot? Yes, ma'am. And you helped him? I didn't know what else to do. He asked me to. He said please. Dorothy pulled her son into a crushing hug. She was shaking, whether from fear or pride or both, Marcus couldn't tell. Inside the emergency room, doctors worked on Bumpy Johnson for 4 hours. They removed 3 bullets, repaired a collapsed lung, sutured his abdomen, and pumped 6 pints of blood into his body. At 4:23 a.m., the lead surgeon, Dr. Patterson, walked out of the operating room and found Bumpy's wife, Mamie, sitting in the waiting room. She'd arrived an hour earlier, her face a mask of controlled terror. He's alive, Dr. Patterson said. But it was close. The closest I've seen in 20 years of surgery. Another 5 minutes and he would have bled out in that alley. Mamie closed her eyes, tears running down her face. Who found him? A child, Dr. Patterson said. 12-year-old boy named Marcus Webb. He's the reason your husband is still breathing. Mamie looked across the waiting room. Marcus sat in a plastic chair, still covered in dried blood, his mother beside him. Mamie walked over slowly, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. Marcus stood up, suddenly terrified again. Not of Bumpy's wife, but of what she might say. What she might think. Mamie knelt down in front of him. She took his hands in hers. They were soft, elegant, covered in rings that probably cost more than everything Marcus's family owned. What's your name, baby? Marcus Webb, ma'am. How old are you, Marcus? 12. Mamie's eyes filled with fresh tears. You're 12 years old and you saved my husband's life. Marcus started, his voice cracking. I just did what anybody would do. No, Mamie said firmly. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have been too scared. But you weren't. You ran toward danger to help someone. Do you understand what that means? Marcus shook his head. It means you're braver than most men twice your age. It means my husband owes you a debt. And Bumpy Johnson always pays his debts. She stood up, pulled a business card from her purse, wrote something on the back. This is my phone number. If you or your family ever need anything, anything at all, you call me. Do you understand? Yes, ma'am. Mamie looked at Dorothy. You raised a good son. Dorothy's voice was thick with emotion. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Bumpy Johnson woke up 3 days later in a private hospital room. The first thing he saw was Mamie sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. The second thing he saw was a photograph on the nightstand. A 12-year-old boy with kind eyes and a nervous smile. Who's that? Bumpy's voice was rough, damaged from the breathing tube they'd removed that morning. That's Marcus Webb, Mamie said softly. That's the child who saved your life. Bumpy stared at the photograph for a long time. Tell me everything. Mamie told him. About Marcus finding him in the alley. About Marcus running for help even though he could have been killed. About Marcus following the ambulance to the hospital, covered in blood, refusing to leave until he knew Bumpy would survive. When she finished, Bumpy was crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just silent tears running down his face. How old? 12. Bumpy closed his eyes. A child. A child saved me. Not just any child. A brave child. A good child. I want to meet him. Not yet. You need to rest. The doctors say you'll be here for at least 2 more weeks. But when you're better, I'll bring him to you. No, Bumpy said, his voice gaining strength. I'll go to him. To his home. With respect. The way you honor someone who saved your life. April 15, 1952. Bumpy Johnson walked out of Harlem Hospital against doctor's orders. He'd spent 6 weeks recovering, 6 weeks thinking about a 12-year-old boy who'd saved his life when grown men would have walked away. The doctors said he needed another month. Bumpy said he'd waited long enough. He had a debt to pay, and Bumpy Johnson never left debts unpaid. Marcus Webb lived in a 5th-floor walk-up on 142nd Street, between Lenox and 7th Avenue. The building was old, worn down by decades of neglect and poverty. Peeling paint, broken mailboxes, the smell of cooking grease and mildew in the hallways. It was the kind of building most people tried to escape from. But to the families who lived there, it was home. And they protected it the way Harlem protected its own. Bumpy arrived at 3 p.m. on a Saturday. He came alone, no bodyguards, no entourage, just him wearing his best suit, charcoal gray with a white pocket square. In his hands, he carried 2 things. A brown paper bag and an envelope. He climbed the 5 flights of stairs slowly. His chest still hurt, his breathing was labored, but he didn't stop. Pain was temporary. Debt was permanent. When he reached apartment 5C, he stood outside the door for a moment, listening. He could hear voices inside. A woman, Marcus's mother probably, and a child laughing. Normal sounds. Family sounds. The kind of sounds Bumpy protected from the shadows but rarely experienced himself. He knocked. 3 times, firm but polite. The laughter stopped. Footsteps approached the door. A lock clicked. Dorothy Webb opened the door, saw who was standing there, and her face went through 3 emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, fear, then something close to awe. Mr. Johnson, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Webb, Bumpy said, removing his hat. I apologize for coming unannounced. I was hoping I could speak with your son. With Marcus. Dorothy's hand tightened on the doorknob. Is he in trouble? No, ma'am. Quite the opposite. May I come in? Dorothy hesitated. Every person in Harlem knew Bumpy Johnson's reputation. Gangster. Numbers king. The man who'd killed Dutch Schultz's crew. The man who'd made the Italian mob back down. The man who ruled the streets with an iron fist wrapped in velvet. But they also knew something else. Bumpy Johnson kept his word. And he protected the neighborhood. Dorothy stepped aside. Please, come in. The apartment was small, 3 rooms total. A living room with a worn sofa and a television that probably only got 2 channels. A tiny kitchen where something was cooking on the stove, smelled like collard greens and cornbread. And 2 bedrooms, one for Dorothy, one for Marcus and his younger sister. But the apartment was clean. Spotless, actually. Pictures on the walls, crocheted doilies on the tables, fresh flowers in a vase by the window. Dorothy Webb didn't have much, but what she had, she took care of. Marcus was sitting on the sofa doing homework. When he looked up and saw Bumpy Johnson standing in his living room, his eyes went wide. The pencil fell from his hand. Hello, Marcus, Bumpy said gently. You remember me? Marcus nodded. Couldn't speak. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Bumpy smiled. That's the same face I made when I woke up in the hospital and your mama told me what you did. He walked over slowly, sat down on the sofa next to Marcus. Not too close, giving the boy space, but close enough to talk man to man. "Marcus," Bumpy said, his voice serious now. "I'm going to tell you something I don't tell many people. You saved my life. Do you understand what that means?" Marcus found his voice. I didn't want you to die." "Why not?" "Most people would have been happy to see me dead. I'm not a good man, Marcus. I've done things, terrible things. Things I can't take back. So why did you help me?" Marcus looked at his mother, then back at Bumpy. "Because you asked me to. And because," he paused, searching for the words. "Because my mama always says if someone needs help and you can give it, you give it. Doesn't matter who they are." Bumpy's eyes went glossy. He blinked hard, cleared his throat. "Your mama is a wise woman." He set the brown paper bag on the coffee table. "This is for you." Marcus looked at his mother. Dorothy nodded. "It's okay, baby. Open it." Marcus opened the bag slowly. Inside was a brand new baseball glove. Wilson, top of the line, the kind Marcus had seen in store windows but could never afford. The leather was soft, perfectly oiled, with Marcus Webb stitched into the palm in elegant script. Marcus's hands trembled as he pulled it out. "Mr. Johnson, this is too much." "No," Bumpy said firmly. "It's not enough. You gave me my life back, Marcus. You gave my wife her husband back. There's no amount of money, no gift in the world that equals that. But I wanted you to have something. Something that reminds you that what you did mattered." He reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope. "This is for your mother." Dorothy took the envelope hesitantly. "Mr. Johnson, we don't need charity." "It's not charity," Bumpy said. "It's gratitude. And it's practical. Open it." Dorothy opened the envelope. Inside were bills. $100 bills. She counted quickly, her eyes going wider with each one. $5,000. "Mr. Johnson, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can. And you will." Bumpy's voice was gentle but firm. "Marcus told me you work night shifts at the hospital. That you leave him with his grandmother. That you're trying to save money to move to a better neighborhood." Dorothy's eyes filled with tears. "How did you?" "I asked around," Bumpy said. "I wanted to know about the boy who saved me. Wanted to know what kind of family raises a child that brave, that good." He looked at her directly. "You're raising 2 children alone. You work 60 hours a week. You're barely making rent. And you still raised a son who runs toward danger to help a stranger. That money," Bumpy continued, "is going to do 3 things. First, it's going to pay off whatever debts you have. Second, it's going to cover Marcus's education. All of it. Elementary, high school, college if he wants it. And third, it's going to move you out of this building into a better apartment. A safer neighborhood. Because Marcus saved my life, and the least I can do is make sure his life is safer too." Dorothy was crying now. Full tears streaming down her face. "Mr. Johnson, I don't know what to say. Say you'll take it. Say you'll let me do this one good thing. God knows I've done enough bad ones." Dorothy looked at her son, saw the baseball glove in his hands, saw the hope in his eyes. She looked back at Bumpy Johnson, the most dangerous man in Harlem, sitting on her sofa with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you." Bumpy stood up, put his hat back on. "There's one more thing." He looked at Marcus. "You're 12 now, right?" "Yes, sir." "In 6 years you'll be 18. A man. And when that day comes, if you ever need anything at all, you come find me. A job, a favor, protection, whatever you need. You saved my life, Marcus. That means your life is connected to mine now. Forever. Do you understand? Marcus nodded, unable to speak. Good. Bumpy walked toward the door, then stopped. Turned back. And Marcus, one more thing. Stay in school. Stay away from the streets. You've got a good heart. Don't let this neighborhood harden it. Be better than me. Be the kind of man your mama can be proud of. I will, sir. Bumpy Johnson left apartment 5C at 3:47 p.m. on April 15, 1952. Dorothy Webb used that money to move her family to a better building on Sugar Hill. Marcus Webb graduated high school with honors in 1958, went to Howard University on a scholarship Bumpy quietly arranged, and became a teacher. And for 20 years, Bumpy kept track of him. Quietly, from a distance, making sure Marcus had what he needed. When Marcus's grandmother got sick in 1960, the hospital bills were mysteriously paid. When Marcus needed a car to commute to his teaching job in 1964, a used Chevy appeared with keys and a note that just said, "Paid in full." But the real story, the moment that made grown men cry, happened in 1972. Marcus Webb was 32 years old, married with 2 kids, teaching 6th grade at PS 149 in Harlem. He'd built a good life. Quiet, honest, exactly what Bumpy had told him to do. He'd seen Bumpy occasionally over the years, always from a distance. A nod on the street, a wave across a restaurant. Bumpy never intruded, never asked for anything. The debt was paid, as far as Marcus was concerned. Until July 9, 1972. 1 week after Bumpy Johnson died of a heart attack at Wells Restaurant. Marcus attended the funeral. Thousands did. The streets were packed. Politicians, musicians, hustlers, regular people whose lives Bumpy had touched. When it was Marcus's turn to view the casket, he knelt down, whispered thank you, and walked away with tears in his eyes. 3 days later, Marcus received a letter. Hand-delivered by a lawyer named Theodore Wright. Inside was a handwritten note from Bumpy Johnson, dated June 1972, 1 month before his death. It read, "Marcus. If you're reading this, I'm gone. I've been sick for a while. The doctors say my heart is giving out. Ironic, considering most people thought I didn't have one. I wanted to write this while I still could. While my hands still work and my mind is still clear. Because there's something I never told you. Something I need you to know. When you saved my life in 1952, you didn't just give me 20 more years. You gave me hope. You reminded me that goodness exists. That a child can see a man bleeding in an alley and choose compassion over fear. You restored something in me I thought I'd lost. For 20 years, I watched you grow. Watched you become the man I knew you would be. A teacher. A husband. A father. Everything I wasn't. Everything I wanted to be. I'm leaving you something. Not money, though there's some of that too. I'm leaving you the deed to my house on Edgecombe Avenue. The one I bought in 1955. It's paid off. It's yours now. Raise your children there. Fill it with love and laughter and everything I couldn't. You saved my life, Marcus. Now I'm giving you a home. It's the least I can do. One last thing. In the basement of that house, there's a box with your name on it. Open it when you're ready. Thank you, son. Thank you for showing me that even in darkness, there's light. Bumpy. Marcus read that letter 3 times before he could breathe. The house on Edgecombe Avenue was worth $150,000 in 1972. But it wasn't the money that broke him. It was the word, son. He drove to the house that afternoon. Found the box in the basement. Inside was the blood-stained tablecloth from the night Marcus saved him. And underneath it, a photograph. Marcus at 12 years old, standing in front of Wells Restaurant, the baseball glove on his hand. On the back, Bumpy had written, "The bravest person I ever met." July 1952. Marcus Webb collapsed on the basement floor and cried. Not from sadness. From love. From the overwhelming realization that Bumpy Johnson, the gangster, the killer, the king of Harlem, had loved him like a son. Marcus Webb lived in that house for 40 years. Raised his children there. His grandchildren played in the same rooms where Bumpy Johnson once planned empires. And every year on March 3rd, Marcus would visit Bumpy's grave and place a baseball on the headstone. Because 20 years after a 12-year-old boy saved a dying gangster's life, that gangster gave the boy a home. And proved that loyalty, gratitude, and love can exist even in the darkest hearts. That's the story they don't tell. The story about how Bumpy Johnson repaid a debt not with money or power, but with everything he had. His home. His legacy. His heart. If this story of loyalty, gratitude, and unexpected love moved you, hit that subscribe button. Drop a like if you believe that one act of kindness can change everything. Share this with someone who needs to know that good deeds are never forgotten. Comment below, would you have helped Bumpy in that alley? Let me know. And remember, the bravest thing you can do is choose compassion when fear tells you to run.